Welcome to the Corporate Governance Program. I'm Amir Qureshi. This program is brought to you by Business Plus in association with IFC, the International Finance Corporation. During the course of the past few weeks, we've sought opinions from various stakeholders when it comes to corporate governance. We've been lucky enough to speak to some of Pakistan's leading chairmen, members of the board, as well as some of the academics specializing in the area of corporate governance. During the past few weeks, many issues have been raised about the state of corporate governance in Pakistan and where we need to go from here. In this very special episode, we are very lucky to have with us the chairman of SECP, Mr. Raziur Rahman, to talk about the state of corporate governance in Pakistan and where we go from here. Mr. Raziur Rahman, thank you very much for being part of the Corporate Governance Program.
Thank you very much.
How effective do you believe the Code of Corporate Governance has been in promoting good governance in Pakistan?
If you look at the practices that the corporate sector had before the code was introduced, and in some cases made mandatory, in other cases optional, you'll find a sea change. Now we have independent directors who are required by the code to be appointed at each of the company's boards. We also have the CFO and company secretary who are there and are appointed by the board. So the managing director, because he doesn't like the CFO's face, cannot remove him. It has to be appointed and removed by the board of directors. There's also a requirement for mandatory audit committees to be in place. Again, this is a very important reform so that the company's affairs are looked at by internal auditors on a regular basis. You notice that all these reforms were not there before the code came into effect. So we've done a survey, and the results have been that over 80% of the persons who have been interviewed feel that the code has been implemented in letter and in spirit. And I think that's a very good percentage.
Based on the discussions we've had with many people during the course of our past few episodes, most seem to believe that companies are really not adopting the Code of Corporate Governance wholeheartedly. In fact, they just seem to be ticking the boxes. What's your take on this?
I think this is not the full, your perception is there, but it is not the whole truth. Like I said earlier, we have a mandatory requirement and a voluntary requirement. And companies are, by and large, based on the survey, adopting these practices. In the voluntary requirements, they are a bit lax, as we tend to be in our part of the world, but as far as the mandatory requirements are concerned, they are complying with them. And I think it's important to realize that it is a phase that is growing and evolving as we move along. So, although they're not doing it now, but they realize the benefit that will accrue to them if they follow the code. And hence, I think it's important that over time, the code is implemented. We can't do it overnight. So I'm very pleased with the progress that's taking place at the moment.
Do you think the way to improve corporate governance in Pakistan is by additional regulation or legislation, or should the companies be left to do their own thing to improve and set up systems that work for them?
I think the experience in Pakistan has been, or in other emerging countries, that you have to lead by regulations, by legislation, to get the companies to move in this path. Once they start realizing the dividends that they can get from good corporate governance, they then adopt it voluntarily. The world is moving to a stage where most companies are required to adopt practices, good corporate governance practices, and I think we will fall in line. But to start with, I think we cannot afford to have a voluntary system in place. Legislation is fine, and that's why we have two sets of the code. One is mandatory and one is voluntary. So I think we are going about it in the right manner. We just need to give it time for companies to start realizing what is the dividend of following good corporate practices.
What do you think about the role of the IFC in helping to promote the message of good governance across Pakistan?
I think IFC has really played the role of a catalyst. They started the ball rolling, and of course, in partnership with us, we felt that this is something which should be practiced in Pakistan, and immediately started the ball rolling. We had some like-minded people, institutions that came up with us, put up the money, and we have a Pakistan Institute of Corporate Governance. So they played the catalyst role, and I think that's a very important part. They've also been helping the Pakistan Institute of Corporate Governance with some of the board development series programs and in other programs. They're also participating with the cost, which was necessary because we had limited budgets to start with. So that was a very welcome contribution that IFC had to made to the whole process, and I'm grateful to them. By the way, they've also funded a survey on the corporate governance practices in Pakistan, which was a very, very important and very good reassessment of where we are today. As I mentioned earlier, we've done fairly good as far as the implementation is concerned.
We now need to take a short commercial break, but we'll be back with more of the Corporate Governance Program. Don't go away.